Welcome back, everyone, to episode 2 of the Long Way Around podcast. Look at us, Tony, making
Look
it
at us.
another episode.
We didn't die, and people actually seem to like it, so that's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, at least we're getting listeners. I think that's a win. So, on today's episode of the Long Way Around podcast, we are going to be talking about kids, not necessarily our kids. I'm not a father, as far as I know, and I don't believe Tony is.
I don't. Well, now who am I kidding? No, I'm not. No kids here.
Not as far as we know.
No.
No, on today's episode, we are going to be discussing kids and how they have reacted to our conditions over the years. And we're also going to be sharing some fun stories. We're also going to look at what parents can be doing to help their children become more familiar with people with disabilities. So the title of today's episode is Kids Are So Honest. What are things you hear from kids? I know over the years, I've heard plenty of interesting lines. Tony, I know you have some good stories as well. Why don't you kick it off with one of your go-to stories regarding how kids have perceived you over the years?
I swear I'm here. I swear I'm here. Hold on. We're just doing this as we go along here. In case you didn't notice, I'm not at home. I am in Utah right now in a hotel. So I'm just getting myself together. We're still just talk amongst yourselves.
All right. So while Tony
Here we go.
gets that
I'm back.
together.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back. We're good. I needed to see you because I know what I look like already, and I needed to see what it is we're talking about today. This is very professional, people. Very professional. Okay. So yeah, we're talking about kids today. Talking about not my kids because I don't have any. Not talking about Kevin's kids because he didn't have any. Talking about your kids. Talking about your badass kids. Because kids say some crazy things. Man. Okay, so let's talk about it. Geez. You know, the funny thing is, like, kids don't have any filter. Some adults don't either, but kids don't have any filter. So when they see something, they're gonna say whatever they think, right? Because they don't know right from wrong. They don't know tact or class, or whatever. Classy kids. Are there classy kids?
Pinkies up. They need to learn pinkies up, apparently.
Do you have classy
Be
kids?
classy.
Is that a thing? Okay. And so like they just say whatever they want to say, right? And so, like, as a kid, like, kids can be brutal sometimes, right? Kids can be brutal. Kids would always ask me, like, what happened to you? Why are you like this? Right? I mean, you get that all the time, right? And like, I used to tell kids when I was a kid that, I was born this way because that's the truth. And then as I got a little bit older and a little bit more smart assed, I would start just making up stories about, what happened to me. And so one story that I used to tell people a lot, especially really the young kids, because like most adults won't ever believe this story, some do though, is that like I got attacked by a tiger, right? I got attacked by a tiger because I have a surgery scar on my right elbow. I don't know if you can see that or not. And so I used to tell kids all the time that I got attacked by a tiger. And some kids would be like, "Oh wow, really?" Like, yeah, I'd swing through the jungles of Guatemala. Or I don't even know if there's tigers in Guatemala, but Kevin's crying right now. No, it's okay. Kevin's crying right now because the story is so sad.
Sorry.
No, it's
Needed
okay.
to adjust my chair.
Don't apologize, please. So I would tell kids that I was attacked by a tiger. Actually, as I got a little bit older, like mid-teens, I made the story that I was on a rescue mission in like the jungles of Guatemala. I don't know why Guatemala. I think I actually need to go there one of these days. And then like I rescued a bunch of kids from the jungle, and I was, I got injured on the way out. And so, I mean, yeah, man, kids love stories. I love telling stories, as wild as they are.
Kids are savage, honestly, especially toddlers. They don't care. Like you said, they'll just come up to you and be like, "So, what's wrong with you?" Like,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe you could ask that a little more tactfully.
No, I like it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly, to a degree, I respect it, because you have adults who come up to you and they'll be like, excuse me, do you mind if I ask, why are you in a wheelchair? and the like approach it so like too softly almost. Whereas
Yeah.
kids are just like, hey, what's wrong with you? Just cut to the chase. I really think that's a better way to go about it. Skip the other stuff. I remember this one time. I was going to a beach near Chicago here for 4th of July fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with some friends. They're all able-bodied, and we're looking for a place on the beach to set up to watch the fireworks. And all of a sudden, this little kid comes up to me, and I'm walking while I'm doing this. I don't have the wheelchair with me. This kid comes up to me all of a sudden, and he looks at me, and he goes like the most serious face. He's like, "Do you have to go to the bathroom?" And I'm like, what? Why are you asking me that? And then this kid's dad runs up to him and he's like, get away from him, grabs his arm and like pulls him away. It was just like, I was just like, did that kid really just ask me if I have to go to the bathroom?
I love it. You were doing the pee-pee walk.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, my regular waddling like a penguin is just a permanent pee-pee walk. And I just have to look. I just look like I have to pee all the time.
I love it.
That one was wild. Kids are they see something and they're just like, oh, I want to know about that. And I also think it's interesting. I personally am an uncle of 4. I have 2 nieces and 2 nephews. They're the best thing in the world. I love them dearly.
Same. That's another similarity we have. Just mark it down right now. 2 nephews,
nice.
two nieces. Same.
Do you really? Wow.
I do.
That's
I
amazing.
swear.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, they're the best, and it's been interesting as an uncle, watching them grow. And I can almost see the moment that they realize that I'm a little different. It's usually when they're between like 2 and 3 years old, when they're starting to become like sentient human beings.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, it'll be like I go there once and they're just like playing, doing whatever, and then I'll come over another time and they'll be like looking at me like, oh, wait, you're a little different than everybody else, and it's not a bad thing. It's not at all. I know that day is going to come, and I kind of planned for that purposely. When they were all born, I made sure to buy them and my siblings, their parents, books that really spoke about disability. And it was something that they could show the kids, and it would help them understand, like, hey, this person uses a wheelchair just like Uncle Kev uses a wheelchair. This is why they use it. This is when he uses it. And they, honestly, it seems like they've picked up on it pretty well. I have a niece who she'll be 7 at the end of April, and I can tell, already understands that, oh, if I offer Uncle Kev a pretzel, I have to feed it to him.
Yeah.
I can't just hand it to him and he'll do it himself. And she's only 7. So I think, introducing kids to that idea early on really goes a long way, because I think about when I was a kid and I would go to events sometimes with my classmates, and, I could tell like they wanted to help, but they didn't know how, or they weren't sure if they should help, if they were like allowed to help. So yeah, I'm really glad that that's something that it seems kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah, for sure. And and I think too, like introducing kids early and educating them early is super important. Like my oldest niece, who will be 16 later this year. Oh my baby Jesus. Why?
She's gonna be driving you around soon.
Anyway, when she was like 3 or 4 and she was small enough to do this, and it wasn't weird because she wasn't 16 then, she would like sit in my lap and I would like give her little rides around in my chair. And I remember once very specifically, I would drive kind of fast and like throw her onto the couch, so she'd go tumbling off my legs onto the couch. And it was always kind of a fun thing to do with kids. But yeah, I mean, kids are super flexible, right? Like they don't know anything, right? And they only know it's different because they see the world after a while. Like you said, they become sentient beings and they realize that, oh, this is actually different from everybody else, right? And so like kids just say wild stuff, man. Like I remember one time I was at the mall and this kid comes up to me, a little tiny little kid, he's probably like 4, 5 maybe, and he looks at me dead in the eyes. He goes, "You're a little man." And I was like, "Dude," and I'm short. I mean, like I'm tiny dude. Like I'm not big, right? And I was like, "Okay, cool." I was like, "All right, awesome." And he looks at me dead in the eyes. He goes, "You got a big head." And I was like, "What the seriously, dude? I got a big head?" He told
Wait, is that an arthrogryposis thing?
I
Because
don't
I have a huge head also.
you know what? I mean, no, I don't think so, because I know some folks with arthro that don't have huge heads. And so it's just me and you, really.
Great, we're
We're
just the
just
lucky ones, I guess.
big-headed mofos over here. But yeah, he looked at me dead in the face. He was like, "You got a big head." And I was like, "Boy, if I'm gonna whoop your ass right here in this mall in front of everybody. Don't do it." I get little, I get, "You're a little man," a lot. And usually my comeback is like, "Well, I'm bigger than you," even though at some point this kid's going to be like 6'4" and 250 pounds and yoked, right? Will throw me around at some point. But right now, I got you, kid. So you better watch your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a few kids come up to me. Well, usually when I'm out of the wheelchair, and they'll just be
Mm.
like, "You walk funny." And be like, "Oh, thank you. You look funny." Like, I'll throw it right back at you, kid. I don't care how old you are. I don't care.
You
I don't,
should
you know.
you should tell them that you got hit by a grenade. Even though, like, if their dad's like a military veteran who's been injured in combat, maybe not a great idea. But I don't know. Just something. Come up with something. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, yeah, I walk funny. What's it to you, kid? I'm half penguin. What do you want? Right?
yeah. My dad lives in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You
you
want to see
know,
my tail? You want to see, huh? You want to see my tail?
you want to see me
Yeah.
slide down a glacier on my
Yeah.
belly? I can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I'm a penguin. What do you got to say about that, kid? Huh? Huh? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, kids' reactions are very much influenced by how their parents view disability. Um, you know, I mean, that's how kids learn all of their behaviors
Yeah.
pretty much. And if a parent reacts to someone with a disability in a negative way, then the child is probably going to do the same. I remember this one time, and this is actually a positive story. I was riding home from my former employer in downtown Chicago, and it was a colder day. There weren't a lot of people out. I remember I got to a crosswalk, and there was a dad and a kid in front of me. The kid was probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7, if I had to guess. And I remember the kid turning to his dad and being like, "How does he drive his wheelchair?" And normally, when things like this have happened, I've seen the parents be like, "Shh, don't ask that," or, they'll walk away or anything of that nature. But kudos to this dad. He turned around right away and walked up to me, and he was like, "Sir, my son is interested in how you drive your wheelchair. Would you mind showing him?" And I was like, "Oh, no, not at all. I drive it with my head. This is how I go forward, sideways,
Mhm.
backwards, all that." Gave him like probably a 10 to 15-second tutorial before the crosswalk changed, and I kept moving along. But I always tell this story to people because it is so important about how you react to questions like
Oh, for
that.
sure. Oh, for sure. I actually had a similar experience not that long ago. I'm going through a parking lot and I'm heading to like a fancy grocery store or whatever. Not that I'm like fancy or anything, but like, I was heading there for something. I don't remember. So I'm going through the parking lot and I hear this kid and he goes, again, "Mommy, look at that little man." And mom's like, "Oh, shh, shh, shh," like I'm deaf, right? Or like I couldn't hear it. And I like did a complete 180 and I could feel her pooping in her pants as I was turning around. Like I could feel it, right? I could smell it. And I turn around and I could see the look on her face. She's like, I'm sure she's like, "Oh shit, she's gonna rip me a new one right now." And like this is a positive story. So everybody hang on for a second. I'm telling the story here. And I go up to the kid and I'm like, "Hey, what's your name?" I don't remember the kid's name right now, but I go up and I'm like, "Hey, what's your name?" And blah, 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 blah. And we have this conversation and we're talking and mom, I could see she's like, "Okay, I'll have to go change my pants later, but this is gonna go okay." Right. And I'm answering questions, right? It's like, how'd you do this? I was like, "Well, I was born this way," and all these other questions. And then I remember he's like a soccer player, right? And so I don't know if we talked about this before, but I play power wheelchair soccer. So we bonded on the moment of being soccer players together. And I asked him who his favorite player was and all these other things. And mom was super gracious afterwards. She's like, "Oh, thank you very much for talking to my son," and all these other things. And yes, I think it does come from us as well to educate not only the kids, but more importantly, the parents, because like you said earlier, like kids learn everything. Well, not everything, thank goodness, but they learn a lot from their parents. And showing parents that it's okay to ask questions kind of breaks that myth, right? Breaks the mystery of it. And so I'm going to tell all of you other folks out there who are disabled, who live with a disability or whatever you want to call it, like, don't be a jerk about it. Just, maybe answer a question or two, right? There's always a few of you who get offended by it, and then it makes it harder for the rest of us. So stop. All right. I don't want to have to like make up for your terrible attitudes. Seriously. So yeah, it was cool. It was good. And I think it is good. And I think more often we need to like stop and turn around and answer these questions, because like the parents have these questions too, right? Unless they know somebody who has a disability already, right?
No, 100%, 100%. And in my opinion, I would rather, someone take the opportunity to use an interaction with me as an educational moment than just shush their child and tell them, hey, don't ask that, and make it seem like a bad thing.
Right.
I think there's always more to learn. And everyone's experiences in life are different. And ours are extremely different. So I think opening that door is not a bad thing. And generally speaking, I think most people with a disability are willing to discuss it, as long as the questions are appropriate. Obviously, there's a line that you probably shouldn't cross.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah,
And it all depends on context and like who you're talking to and your relationship to them and all of that. But I would so much rather have a parent use it as an educational moment. Like I remember this one time, this question always used to bother me when I was a kid, because as we have discussed, I'm an ambulatory power wheelchair user, so I do have the ability to walk.
Cheater.
And it would always drive me insane when little kids or even sometimes adults would pass me and they'd be like, "Why can't he walk?" And I would just want to turn around and be like, "Oh, I can walk. I only use this for longer distances." So I think that's an assumption that we really need to change. Not everyone who uses a wheelchair can't walk.
You're right. You should now, the next time, this isn't a homework assignment for you. The next time you hear that, I want you to turn around, stop, and get out. Can you get out of your chair like at will?
Yeah, mostly if I get it to the right height.
I need you know where this is going. I need you to do this for me though. I need you down the streets of Chicago, wherever you are. I need you the next time you hear this, I need you to turn around and get out of your chair and start penguin waddling towards them and go, "Oh my, it is a miracle. Praise the Lord." And start walking
Lord.
and then fall over. And then
fall over. Oh no, it was a short-lived miracle.
Right. You might need to be wearing a helmet, which would actually make you look more disabled, which would make it even funnier.
Oh God, don't bring up helmets. I was the kid who had to wear a helmet at recess.
Did you? Oh man. Oh really?
Yeah.
Well, see, I grew up in the 80s, and like this is before the ADA and safety and all that stuff. Like I
was the lucky one to get the benefit from that.
You were the lucky one. Well, no, let me say this. You probably have less brain damage than I do.
I don't know, man. I've had 4 concussions in my
really?
life.
Oh, damn.
It could be pretty. It could be pretty even. Who knows?
Okay. I mean, maybe. All right, cool. We'll have to talk about concussions one day too.
We could make a whole episode on that one.
We could.
Wow. But when I was in school, when we were at recess, and honestly, it was throughout the school day, they would make me wear this like small mountain climber's vest that my aide would have to hold on to, so that if I fell, they could like kind of ease the fall. And then when we would go outside for recess, they would make me put a helmet on. And I just remember after elementary school, I got to middle school and they wanted me to continue wearing both of those things, the vest and the helmet. And I was like, Absolutely not.
Hell
If
no.
if I have to keep wearing this stuff in middle school and potentially high school, I will only be remembered as the kid who wore a helmet.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm glad I grew up in the 80s because like nobody cared. Like there was no
People cared
safety
a
back
little
then.
too, dude. People cared a little too much in the '90s and the
Look,
early
I'm gonna say
2000s.
this. I don't care what anybody says. The 90s ruined an entire generation of people. Come find me,
Whoa,
fight
whoa,
me. I
whoa,
will fight you on this. I will
whoa, whoa,
fight
whoa! Those
you,
are strong words. The '90s were an
dude.
amazing
I
decade.
mean, I guess so. Whatever. I just, oh man. But it's interesting that you bring up the whole like school thing, right? Because like kids, like I said, kids are kids, and kids are flexible, right? And so like once they, and I guess it's kind of the same for adults, even though I think it's easier for kids. Like once they meet you and have a conversation with you for like 30 seconds, then it's cool, right? And then like you guys just kind of figure it out together, where adults have like, the world and all of that knowledge that they've gained, all that bad knowledge that they've gained. And it takes some adults more time to kind of warm up to you, right? So like kids are just kids. I remember when I was in elementary school, like my friends would just like in my wheelchair just push me around, or we'd form a train of some sort and we'd like weave through the playground, whatever's the slides and stuff, and I'd be the front of the train and everybody would follow behind me, and we'd do this long big like snake through the whatevers, and we'd play other games and do stuff. I did one time, I remember, because I just wanted to be like everybody else. It was middle school where my friends are playing hacky sack. This is when hacky sack was like a huge thing, and I'm in the circle. I'm like right in the circle with everybody else, and like what am I gonna do? My feet don't work, right? What am I gonna do, right? And so like they're
Hit it with your
kicking.
head, Tony. Come
Yeah,
on.
well, right, and that's kind of what that's what I was doing. It didn't work out very well because I only got so much movement. But I just remember, I remember once this kid kicked the hacky sack and it popped me right in the face, and I
Jeez.
was like, that was the last time I ever entered a hacky sack circle. So I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. I recognized my limits. But I mean, kids like your classmate. I mean, classmates are they're cool, right? They're
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I would say, there was a lot of kids that like I went to school with who maybe back then we weren't necessarily the best of friends. Maybe they weren't super comfortable talking to me. But like I look at it now and it's like it would be fine today.
Yeah,
Some of
sure.
them I am still friends with, and it's like, oh yeah, like we're good friends. They totally understand my needs, they understand like what being friends with me kind of entails, because it does entail a little bit more. There if you want to be a part of my life, like you kind of have to work for it a little bit and you got to put in a little effort because it's not like I can just get in a car and go to them.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So I think that process does definitely happen over time. So since we're on the subject of school here, so what was the process of making friends for you like? Because I know for me, it was a bit challenging at times, and I'll get into that, but I wanted to let you have a shot at it first.
Honestly, it wasn't really anything different, honestly. I mean, like, that first day of school, you're the kid in the wheelchair, and everybody asks you questions and things. But like by day two, like nobody cared anymore. Like you just do your thing, right? Like you go up and you make friends, say, "Hey, I'm Tony," and "Hey, I'm so and so." Let me tell you, I even had a girlfriend in like second grade. Her name was Cheryl.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh,
Her name
look
was
at you.
Cheryl. Yeah, we would like watch like TV together when they had the TV in the classroom. We'd sit there next to each other and hold hands or whatever. And like I don't know what she's doing these days. She's like, it's been like decades. But yeah, I even had like a little girlfriend like when I was in school. Man, and so yeah, I mean it was pretty normal, like it was a pretty normal thing. I think part of it though too one of the differences between you and me, and there aren't many, is that I grew up on military bases, like all around the country and even overseas. And I think when you grow up in the military, like you're just inherently more flexible because you have to be, right? Like you move every few years. And so you leave your friends and you make new friends. And so that really helped me as well in terms of being able to make friends because I had to be outgoing, right? I had to introduce myself if I wanted to have friends. And so like making friends has never been a problem for me. And again, kids are flexible. Like once they understand, they're like, oh, all right, cool. It's not a big deal to them anymore, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess my question is, did you have a one-on-one aide in school or
I
no?
did. I did. They didn't make me wear a vest though. Jesus
That was brutal. I'm
my
so glad it was only
God.
elementary school.
Oh my God, man. I did. I did have an aide through school. I mean, you know, I had several throughout the years. There was a Mrs. Mello in middle school. She was awesome. And then like I had a guy, an older, let me tell you, in high school, when you have an older gentleman who's in like his late 50s, early 60s following you around, it's not a good look, folks. It's not a good look. Look, if any educators or administrators are out there watching this right now, if you have a child in high school, pair them up with somebody a little bit younger, please, because you don't want to be hanging around. And no offense to that guy, he was a super nice dude. But man, it's a little embarrassing when you're in that weird stage of life and you're trying to be cool, right? And you got this older gentleman walking around with you, and you can't say, you know, you can't talk like you want to talk with your friends because you're a teenager, and teenagers say crazy things, right? So, but overall though, like it was good. And yeah, I had a helper around. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so my experience, was similar yet also very different. I had one-on-one aides as well, K through 12, and they were different people throughout the years. Unlike you, I was born and raised in the same place. I never moved as a kid. The same house that I grew up in was the same house that I went back to after college. So that was certainly, it was good and bad.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
good in the sense that I was able to maintain some really long-term friendships. I mean, I have some people in my life who I've been friends with for 20, 25 years at this
Mhm.
point. But it also kept me in a bubble.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
the only time there were new people to meet was when we would switch schools. So when I would go from elementary to middle school, we would, the other elementary school fed into that middle school as
Yeah.
well. And then I went to an absolutely massive high school.
Mhm.
My high school graduating class was over 1,100 kids.
Damn, son.
Yeah, it was really big. It was really easy to get lost in a crowd there. And I'll be honest, I look at high school in two halves, basically. The first half, which was freshman and sophomore year, I really didn't enjoy it
Yeah, sure.
because,
Nobody does. Who does?
well, kind of like your situation, I was paired with an older person as well. My aide for freshman and sophomore year was a woman, and she was very nice. She was really good with the academic stuff. She was good with note taking. She was good with keeping me organized, making sure, I knew all of my assignments, all of that stuff. But however, socially, it was awful. Literally, I could not make friends
No,
because
it's terrible.
it was so hard
Yeah.
because one of the places that's where it's easiest to make friends in high school is at lunch.
Yeah, of course.
But the problem was I was walking around with someone who arguably was old enough to be my grandmother. And high school teenage boys don't want to sit
Brutal.
with,
They're
with an
brutal.
older female staff member.
Oh no, they
Um,
gotta
and
behave.
what? Yeah, exactly. Like they all felt censored, and I remember it was a constant issue throughout high school. It really wasn't only until my senior year where I was able to find a table to sit on day
Yeah.
one of that year, and it never changed throughout the year.
Uh,
But so basically, I had this aide freshman and sophomore year, and then at the end of sophomore year, basically, I don't really remember what happened, but she went off on one of my friends about something. And that was the final straw. So I went home that night and I went to my mom and dad and I was like, you have to call my case manager and request a new aide. I can't do this anymore. It's ruining my high school career. It's ruining my social life.
yeah.
So she called the school and she spoke to my case manager the next day. A day or two later, she calls me in and she's like, I spoke to your mom. She said you wanted to get a new aide. I just wanted to talk to you about it first. And I was like,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. I'm committed to it. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
This was with like a month left in the school year. So obviously, like, I'm 16 at this time. I
Yeah.
don't really understand how the working world works. I'm thinking, okay, they're not going to tell her until the school year is over.
Oh, please.
Oh no. Oh no. They told her right away. So now, in addition to getting a new aide the following year, I'm having to deal with my current aide who knows that I no longer want her to be my aide,
Yeah, right.
which was so awkward. So if any administrators are listening to this, please consider who you are hiring, how you hire them, and how you potentially move on to a different aid for a student, because all of these things will affect the student's experience. And that was really not thought of at all. Um, it was, yeah, I was honestly pretty annoyed by it, but it was
Yeah, I'm
funny because
sure.
that last month of the school year, my aide was like kissing my ass, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Like, she was like, she would go into the teacher's lounge and be like, oh, like, they had this dessert here, I brought you one,
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness. Get out of
hoping
here,
that I would change
man.
my mind. And I was
No,
like,
whatever.
absolutely not. I
You're
am
gonna be
not changing
fine,
my mind.
lady. I'm sure you're fine. I'm sure you're doing well, thriving in the world these days. Good for you.
Exactly. So fast forward now to the beginning of junior year,
Uh-huh.
and it was about a week before the school year started, and my case manager called and spoke to my mom.
Mhm.
And my mom gets off the phone. She was like, they found you a new aide.
Yeah.
It's a guy,
Yeah.
and he's 23.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, thank you.
That helps. Okay,
Thank
good.
God.
Good. Okay.
You know?
I thought maybe
So
they were gonna send you like a really hot like post college graduate. Then you'd be the most popular kid in school because you got the really hot aide.
I mean, I wouldn't have complained.
Almost.
But I wouldn't have complained, and maybe the aide they gave me would beg to differ on that. He's a good friend of mine still,
Cool.
but
Nice.
you know, they gave me this male aide, and he was great. I honestly really owe him for a much better high school experience than I ever would have had otherwise. The nice thing was he went to the same high school as me. He had
Oh.
graduated from there about 7 years earlier. And he also went to the college that I ended up going to afterwards. So it was nice because he not only knew how my high school worked and operated, but he also was able to kind of guide me on, hey, when you get to Illinois State, you know, this is what to expect.
Yeah.
These are the good places, these are the bad places, you know, this is stay away from here, do this, do that, all that. That was tremendously helpful for getting adjusted to that next stage of life. And, you know, he's still a good friend of mine. I was in his wedding a little over a decade ago. We still keep in contact to this day. So really finding the right aid for a student can have such an impact on the student's overall experience, including that process of making friends and maintaining a social life.
Yeah, because if you think kids are brutal, high school kids are like, dudes and dudettes, whoever is listening to this, dude, kids are brutal. All right, I know y'all ain't thinking about this, but whatever. Just work with us here. All right, it'll mess you up for years if you don't do it right. No pressure.
I have a story that I tell a lot when I do my motivational speaking. My freshman year, this was when I had the first aide, the one I didn't really like. The beginning of freshman year, I was sitting with people that I was friends with in middle school. And slowly but surely, you know, they were making friends, finding other places, you know, other tables to eat at, all of that. And then a few weeks into that school year, unfortunately, my grandfather passed away. So I was out for about 3 days, I want to say. So I come back to school and I go to the lunch table that day and nobody's there. I'm like, okay, well, this lunch table is now gone. So one of the people I was sitting with came up to me and he was like, hey, like, I'm sitting right over here, you know, come on and sit here with us. So I was like, okay, great. So I go over there with my aide, you know, she starts getting my lunch out, starts feeding me, all that. And the other kids that my friend is eating with come back to the table and they look at me and they go, what are you doing here? And I just like eating my lunch and they go, you can't sit here. And I'm just like, why? And they're just like, we don't want to sit with you. That's literally all they said. They didn't give me a good reason. They were just like, we don't want to sit with you. And I was like, okay, well, my lunch is already unpacked and I'm already eating, so I'm not moving. So they grabbed their lunches and they grabbed their backpacks and they got up and they walked away
Good for
and
you.
sat at a different table.
Good for you.
Well, that's what they did. Honestly, I felt pretty terrible in that
Oh, I'm
moment.
sure. Oh, I'm sure.
You know, my friend came back and he was like, "What happened?" And I was like, "This is what happened." You know, and unfortunately, this friend wanted to sit with them, so you know that table was no longer an option. Thankfully, my freshman year, my older brother was a senior at the same high school. So we had him and I had different lunch periods, but he had some friends who had the same lunch period as me. So I actually ended up sitting with them for pretty much my entire first semester of high school.
Okay,
I sat with seniors because they didn't care. They were mature enough where they were willing to let me sit there and not be jerks about it.
There you go.
So, you know, it certainly taught me a lot about what kids are like. But it's funny because I ended up becoming friends with some of those people who walked away years later.
Really interesting.
And one of them I'm still good friends with today.
Did they apologize to you? Did they say, Kevin, I'm so sorry I was a jerk at freshman year of high school?
I don't know if there's ever been an explicit apology, but they know
homework assignment. Another homework. I want an apology. I know we've been friends for a decade and a half now.
That happened 20 years ago now.
I know it happened 20 years ago. I want my apology.
Oh my God. Oh, that makes me feel old. I started high school 20 years ago.
Hey, look, I graduated high school 30 years ago. What are you talking about? Go away with that. Go away with that. By the way, just to go back on how brutal kids are, I almost got into a fight in middle school. Almost got into a fight in middle school.
Who's gonna fight you?
Okay, no, dude. Okay, so check this out. So it's lunchtime. I'm sitting there eating lunch, and you know the lunch table's right here. I'm bending over like this. I'm eating lunch, and I always leave my chair on, right? Like, you know, especially as a kid, you just leave your chair on, right? And so I'm sitting there eating lunch, and this kid comes up behind me and pulls my joystick and pulls me away from the table. And I looked at him. I'm thinking to myself, oh. And I turned around and I rammed him with my chair. And then he pushed me. He pushed me. And I was like, nope, done. Because I can see where this is going right now. And that was my almost fight in middle school. Fight in middle school. I swear.
Wow.
I was ready to throw down with this dude until he pushed me. And I was like, nope, I'm good. That's just cool. But don't mess with me again. Because now I'm not taking, he didn't really touch me again after that. But still, I'm like, I almost got into a fight in middle school. I would have got my ass whooped.
I mean, who didn't love that child enough that he feels compelled to
push a dude in a wheelchair? I mean, seriously, you pushed a guy in a wheelchair. I mean, to be fair, I did ram the shit out of him, though. I hit him pretty good.
But sometimes people deserve to be rammed.
Yeah, like, I mean, he pushed my joint. He pulled my joint. I was eating lunch. I didn't do anything to him.
Oh, that would drive me insane. That would drive me insane.
My reaction was just to hit him, and then he pushed me, and then that was it.
Yeah, that was a thing that my classmates and even some of my siblings' friends love to do, was mess with my wheelchair. Okay, to whoever is listening to this, don't touch a wheelchair unless you have permission. Let me say that again. Don't touch a wheelchair unless you have permission. Right? They're expensive. I'm sure yours is expensive. Mine is expensive.
I actually got mine at the Goodwill, so it's not. Yeah. I mean, normally they're 16,000. I got mine for like $730 or something like that. Yeah, so it was nice. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Goodwill's awesome.
Well, they can be very expensive, especially when they're brand new. But like, I remember this guy on my brother's baseball team. We're going to our cars after a game. And I've always controlled my wheelchairs with my headrest.
Yeah.
And this guy comes up behind me and he pulls back on the headrest. But when you do that, it's not like a joystick. You pull back on the headrest and you go forward. So I'm going full speed, flying forward, and I'm telling him, let go. And he just is continuing to hold on to it. He literally ran it into my own father.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. And my dad kind of played it up a little bit. Like he didn't actually hurt him,
Yeah.
but he like kind of grazed him with the wheelchair.
Good.
And my
Yeah, I
dad played
love
it
that.
up a little bit.
Yeah, I love
But
that.
that kid never did it again after that. We were
Good.
like, you like, what are you doing, man?
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I do have another question. When you were
Yeah.
in school, since you went on a military base,
Yeah.
did you ever take a bus to school?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. All the time.
You
Actually,
did.
so here, when I lived in South Korea, they didn't really have school buses, right? Like, and not to say it's because it's South Korea or anything, but I was on base, and they didn't have any wheelchair accessible school buses in the early '90s in South Korea. So I took a van, right? A van with with like a lift gate in the back, right? And so they pulled me up and they put me in this thing. And this dude, first of all, I'm a bad Korean. I don't speak Korean. I can ask for water and cigarettes. So that's all I got for you people. And the driver didn't really speak English at all, right? And so this dude was crazy. And not only that, there were no tie. This is the '90s, right? Don't tell me how great of a decade it was. There was no tie downs in the back of this van, right? And I'm using one of those old wheelchairs, which were at that time really just like a manual chair with motors on it, right? Because that's what they were back in the early '90s. And so it's pretty lightweight, maybe 150, 200 pounds at the most. And I'm like flying around, and we're like, weaving through the streets of Seoul. And I remember one time he took a left turn, and my whole chair tips over. My face is now up against the window of the van. And thankfully, like my brother was back there in the van too, and like maybe a friend or two who wanted to catch a ride home and didn't want to get on the bus to go home. And so, yes, I did take buses and other things to school. Korea, I love you, my homeland. I love you. It was wild. It was wild. Yeah, the lift gate, and it also wasn't very like long either. So I had to make sure I was on that thing right. Otherwise, I was rolling right off that thing because there was no barrier in the front to ensure that I wasn't going to roll off it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So.
Oh, I've been there. We had a wheelchair accessible van back in the day that it had the 4-point tie down straps.
Yeah.
That used to be pretty common. And my family, I love them dearly. They would cut corners on certain things and maybe not put the straps on my wheelchair sometimes, or a lot of the time. And there were a few times where there were some really close calls of like the wheelchair almost tipped, or like my face is in the window, or things like that. Luckily, nothing bad ever happened. But I look back on that now and I'm like, oh my God, that was so dumb. Like that, if we had gotten hit, I would have been killed.
Yes.
Easily.
How are we not dead, right?
I ask myself that question all the time.
I do
I'm so
too.
glad that my current van has what's called an easy lock system.
Yeah.
So I have a pin welded underneath the wheelchair, and all I have to do is hit it and it locks me in. It's great. It's the best thing ever invented. But the reason I brought up the school bus question was in first grade, back then, the bus was a rear loader.
Oh yeah, I've been on those. Yeah. When I was in the States, I did the rear loading bus thing. Did you sit sideways?
It was a standard. No, I was facing forward. So it was a standard school bus with a wheelchair lift all the way in the back.
Yeah.
So I was in the very back of the bus, like the furthest possible place from the driver. And I remember there was this one incident in first grade where, I don't know, I was talking to I think they were in like fourth grade, some of the kids sitting in the back of the bus. And I like convinced one of them to pull down my winter hat over my head because I was in first grade and I thought that would be funny for some reason. Well, stupid me, that caused a massive incident apparently. And my parents called the school and told them that this happened. And the kid who did it, who I like told to do it, got in some pretty big trouble. He never talked to me again after that. And from that point forward, they switched the bus and it was a middle loader. Which was fine at the time because it was elementary school. We used the same school bus from second grade through my junior year of high school. Yeah. Bus 6948. I'll never forget it.
Grew up with that bus.
Literally grew up with that bus. And it was a middle loader. And it was fine up until like sophomore, junior year.
Yeah, because you're riding the short bus. Right?
No, it was a regular bus. It was a regular bus, but I was in the middle. and all of my friends who were older now were
Yeah.
all sitting in the back.
Yeah.
So I was stuck up front with the freshmen, and I was
Yeah.
just, and those are things that you care about in high school.
Of course. I care about it now. I'm
Thankfully,
48. I care about that stuff now. I want to sit in the middle with all my friends.
yeah, exactly. And thankfully, that bus actually got retired after my junior year because it was too old. And then the next bus after that, they went back to a rear loader. I guess they were like, okay, well, Kevin's 17 now. He can
There
go
you
in the
go.
back of the bus
Right.
again. Yeah.
Rest in peace,
So,
bus 6948. Rest in peace.
yes.
Okay, so
Rest
let
in
me tell
peace.
you, back in the 80s, I'll tell you, like elementary school, like I didn't really have any incidences on buses with kids. I don't want to go too long on this because whatever. You used to load in the back, but I didn't face forward growing up in the 80s. You think the 90s were wild? You should have been around the 80s. Not only was there a lot of cocaine, there was a lot of not safety going on. And so you would load into the bus, and this is when the wheels had spokes in them still, right? And so the locking system was like these L-shaped brackets that when you pushed them, a little pin would lock into a little hole, right? You've probably seen those, right? Maybe, I don't know. And so some of these buses, the little locking pin wouldn't hold in place when the driver would make a left turn. And so I would have a wheel release right in the middle of a turn, and then like half my chair would go flying. And I'm just kind of like holding on for dear life at this point. This is back in the day when I used to actually wear a seatbelt, because if I didn't wear a seatbelt, I would have been on the floor like at least once a week in these buses. Let me tell you, man, like buses were no joke back in the day. They were a little bit dangerous. And again, I ask myself all the time, like, how I'm still alive. I have no idea. But man, like kids are crazy. Kids are crazy. Being a kid is crazy. Oh man, did you hear that? That was my stomach. I know I'm gonna date myself. I don't really care. It's 10 a.m. right now in Ogden, Utah. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. My body's going crazy. So anyway, back to the kids. I actually, let me tell you, going back to how brutal kids are. I actually had one time I was living, I don't remember where I was. I was in New Jersey, and I was going by some youth center or something, and a bunch of kids were just playing around, and they saw me, and back in the 1500s, where you see like a witch or somebody who's being deemed a witch, they stone this person, right? They looked at me and they're like, yeah, it's the witch, and they started throwing rocks at me. Right? You ever had rocks thrown at you?
Yeah, actually,
dude.
I remember I was in sports camp, like summer sports camp, and it was, I was the only kid in a wheelchair.
Sure,
and
of course.
I was using my wheelchair to run the bases. And I remember one of the kids, as I was going by him, kicked dirt on me and on the wheelchair. And that was actually my moment where I almost threw down. I remember I turned around and I was just like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And that's when the counselors got into it. But like this kid, it was weird. This kid like didn't like me at first. And then after that incident, no problems.
Wow.
It was the strangest thing.
Are you friends still?
I don't think so. I don't even know who. I don't even remember the kid's name.
Okay, all right. Because I was starting to sense a theme around you where like some of your really good friends were real assholes to you when you were young.
Some of them were. Some of them were. I won't name names, but
don't name names. Don't call them out.
Friendships have evolved over the years.
You know who you are, though. You know who you are. He deserves an apology.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, kids can be a little mean sometimes, but I think it has gotten a lot better over the years. I think the normalization of disability and just the prevalence of it, I remember growing up, I would never see disabled characters on TV. I remember the very first disabled character I saw was Stevie from Malcolm in the Middle. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Of course I did, yeah.
Back then, they're about to relaunch it. But Stevie was like the first character I can remember. It was like, oh wow, he's in a wheelchair. He has a disability,
right?
And obviously now there's plenty of options for stuff like that. So I think that's really helped as well.
I don't want to get into it today, but are there really though? We can talk about that another day. But are there really plenty of options? Probably no, not really. It's okay. We'll talk about that.
We'll
talk about it another day. Yes, more than
there
were. We'll talk about that another day. That's a whole separate conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode in regard to what kids say and how we've handled that.
Kids
and how they're so honest. We greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. make sure to click the subscribe button on YouTube and click that like button as well. And also make sure to follow us on our socials. We are on Facebook and Instagram now at TLWA Podcast. That's at TLWA Podcast. The Long Way Around Podcast. We greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will see you all next time for episode 3, where we take a look at traveling on an airplane.
That's right.
Independently
That's
versus
right.
with someone.
That's right.
It should be a really interesting conversation because Tony and I are on opposite ends of that one. So tune in for that interesting conversation, in addition to some potential horror stories from traveling that we both have.
There we go. That's it. Right. And I'm actually, I said it at the top, I'm in Utah right now for an adaptive ski race. I've been traveling like a madman for the last couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that next time. Yes. Thanks for watching. It should
be a great conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you all next time on the Long Way Around Podcast. Thanks so much, everyone.